Welcome to No Verse, where global events meet expert insight. Today, we explore how former U.S. President Donald Trump's aggressive tariff policies didn't just rattle trade balances, they rewired the entire structure of global power. From Beijing to Berlin, and from Wall Street to the World Bank, this is a story of unintended consequences and irreversible shifts. In 2018, then-President Donald J. Trump launched what would become one of the most controversial economic battles in modern U.S. history, a trade war primarily aimed at China. But this wasn't just about steel, soybeans, or semiconductors. It was a move that disrupted global trade flows, redefined alliances, and fueled a worldwide recalibration of economic priorities. Trump's tariffs began as a political promise to bring back American jobs, counter China's economic aggression, and reduce the U.S. trade deficit. His administration placed billions of dollars worth of tariffs on Chinese imports. China retaliated in kind. What followed wasn't just a tit for tat. It was a tectonic shift in global economics and diplomacy. At the core of Trump's strategy was Section 301 of the U.S. Trade Act, which allows the president to impose tariffs if another country engages in unfair trade practices. Trump used this as a blunt weapon, targeting over $360 billion worth of Chinese goods. From electronics to clothing, the tariffs touched nearly every U.S. household and sent shockwaves through multinational corporations that relied heavily on Chinese manufacturing. China, of course, hit back. U.S. agricultural exports, especially soybeans and pork, were devastated. American farmers became one of the first casualties of a war waged far from the fields they worked in. Perhaps the most long-lasting impact of Trump's tariffs has been on global supply chains. Multinational companies, weary of rising costs and unpredictability, began to de-risk from China. Apple, Samsung, and even Tesla started exploring alternative manufacturing hubs in Vietnam, India, and Mexico. This decoupling was no longer theoretical. It was happening in real time. Supply chain managers from Detroit to Dusseldorf scrambled to find alternate suppliers and build redundancy into their systems. What was once a globalized, efficient model of just-in-time production morphed into a fragmented, costlier, and more politically influenced model of just-in-case. Trump's actions didn't occur in a vacuum. Countries around the world began re-evaluating their own dependence on foreign powers. Europe, long a proponent of liberal trade, began discussing strategic autonomy. India launched Make in India. Even China, ironically, doubled down on self-reliance with its dual circulation strategy, aiming to strengthen domestic consumption and reduce dependence on foreign exports. In effect, Trump's tariffs re-legitimized protectionism on the world stage. They gave political cover to leaders worldwide who had long wanted to shield domestic industries, but lacked the justification. Suddenly, nationalism wasn't a taboo in economics, it was policy. While the Cold War was driven by ideology, the U.S.-China confrontation is about dominance, economic, technological, and military. Trump's tariffs added fuel to a fire that was already smoldering beneath the surface. Chinese tech giants like Huawei and ZTE found themselves blacklisted. The U.S. pressed allies not to adopt Chinese 5G infrastructure. Semiconductor exports were restricted. Academic exchanges dwindled, and suspicion replaced cooperation. What began as a dispute over aluminum and solar panels became a larger contest over global supremacy. The fallout didn't stop with great powers. Countries in the global south, from Southeast Asia to Africa, were forced to take sides. As manufacturing left China, some nations like Vietnam and Indonesia gained. But others were caught in the crossfire. Emerging economies found themselves increasingly pressured to align with one camp or the other, the U.S. or China. Whether through Huawei's infrastructure deals or America's Indo-Pacific strategy, the battle for influence intensified. Trade routes, tech infrastructure, and even vaccine diplomacy became weapons in a much broader geopolitical contest. Despite Trump's intentions, several studies showed that American consumers and companies bore the brunt of the tariffs. A 2020 study from the Federal Reserve Bank of New York found that U.S. companies paid over $46 billion in tariffs, and that the burden was largely passed on to consumers. Farmers had to be bailed out with federal subsidies. Manufacturers complained of higher input costs. And ironically, the U.S. trade deficit with China not only persisted, it widened at certain points. The tariffs also didn't significantly bring back jobs from overseas. Many companies chose automation over reshoring, leading to limited employment gains. Here's the twist. While President Joe Biden criticized Trump's trade tactics during the 2020 campaign, many of those tariffs remain in place today. That's because the political rationale hasn't changed. If anything, anti-China sentiment has grown more bipartisan. Biden has taken a slightly more strategic and multilateral approach, coordinating with allies. But the essence of decoupling remains. Whether it's tariffs, semiconductor bans, or tightening scrutiny on Chinese investments, the trajectory hasn't reversed, it's intensified. Europe's cautious turn ***. Europe has found itself in an awkward position. On one hand, it seeks to maintain strong economic ties with China. On the other, it's under increasing pressure from Washington to confront Beijing on human rights, trade imbalances, and security. The European Union has responded by launching investigations into Chinese EV subsidies and implementing its own carbon border adjustment mechanisms, tools that may trigger their own trade tensions. The shift is clear. Europe is slowly waking up to the realization that global trade cannot be separated from geopolitics anymore. Geoeconomics is the new geopolitics ***. In the post-World War II order, trade was considered an engine of peace. Interconnected economies, it was believed, wouldn't go to war with each other. But Trump's tariffs signaled a reversal of that doctrine. Now, economic tools are seen as instruments of power and leverage, much like missiles and military alliances. Sanctions, export bans, supply chain control, and rare earth domination are the new front lines. Trump didn't invent this shift, but he accelerated it. And the world is still adjusting. Conclusion. The tariff legacy ***. Trump's tariff war wasn't just about economic nationalism. It triggered a series of dominoes that are still falling, in boardrooms, in parliaments, and in bilateral relations. It exposed the fragility of globalization, questioned long-held economic theories, and legitimized a more fragmented, competitive world order. Whether history judges Trump's tariffs as visionary or reckless remains to be seen. But one thing is clear. They caused a seismic shift in world affairs that no president, no country, and no corporation can afford to ignore. /call to action. End segment ***. If you found this breakdown insightful, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Noverse for more global news that connects the dots others miss. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Trump's tariff war made the U.S. stronger or more vulnerable in the long run? ***.